Sweden, mid-14th century. Around 1340 AD, the bells of the parish church rang softly in the pale northern dawn, their sound drifting across frozen fields and timbered houses still wrapped in sleep. It was an hour meant for prayer, not for fear. Yet on this morning, an unease hung in the air, subtle, unnamed, like a shadow cast without a visible source. In a small stone chamber not far from the church, Saint Bridget knelt alone. She was already known across Sweden as a woman of visions, respected by nobles, consulted by clerics, feared by some. Widow, mother, mystic. Her nights were rarely silent. They were filled with whispers of conscience, flashes of light, and sudden heaviness in the soul. This morning was no different. But this time, the weight pressed harder. Before her inner sight appeared the image of a priest. He was not a stranger. She recognized his face immediately. The gentle eyes, the calm voice that once echoed from the pulpit. He was beloved by his parish, known for his kindness, his patience with children, his charity to the poor. When he walked through the village, men bowed their heads and women whispered blessings. Many said, "If holiness walks among us, it walks in him." Yet in Bridget's vision, the priest did not stand in a sunlit church. He stood alone, surrounded by darkness so thick it seemed to swallow sound itself. No hymns, no incense, no comforting murmur of prayer, only a vast, echoing void, and the sense of unbearable loss. Bridget's breath caught. She wanted to look away, to dismiss the image as exhaustion or temptation. But the vision did not fade. It sharpened. The priest's face was no longer serene. It was contorted, not with pain alone, but with realization. The terrible awareness of something wasted, something irretrievable. Bridget trembled. She had seen visions of judgment before, but this one struck differently. This man had baptized infants, absolved sins, buried the dead. He had stood at the altar daily, holding the sacred mysteries in his hands. And yet, here he was. "Lord," she whispered, her voice barely more than breath. "How can this be?" The darkness around the priest seemed to answer not with words, but with memory. She saw fragments of his life sermons that pleased the crowd, but avoided uncomfortable truths, confessions hurried through with gentle reassurance, but little correction, sins softened by silence. He feared upsetting his parish, feared losing their affection, feared being disliked more than he feared offending God. The people loved him for it. They praised his mercy, his warmth, his refusal to judge. They filled the church, smiled at his words, and left unchanged. And he, seeing their approval, mistook it for righteousness. Bridget felt a tightening in her chest. She understood now why the vision had come with such force. This was not a warning meant only for one soul. Outside, the church bells ceased. Silence followed. In that silence, Bridget sensed another presence, solemn, unyielding. A truth not spoken, but impressed upon her heart. Love that hides truth is not love at all. The priest in the vision lifted his eyes, as if finally seeing the full measure of what he had lost. Not just heaven, but the souls entrusted to him. Souls he had soothed when he should have guided, comforted when he should have warned. A quiet despair radiated from him, heavier than any cry. Bridget felt tears on her face. She did not rejoice in this vision. She recoiled from it. Because if such a man could fall, what of others? What of those who followed him so gladly? What of those who preferred pleasing words over saving ones? The darkness deepened, and the image began to withdraw. But not before Bridget sensed one final truth, pressing against her conscience. Responsibility increases with holiness. and judgment begins with those who lead. She lowered her head to the stone floor, shaken to the core. What would you have done, knowing that being loved by many does not mean being faithful to God? Share your thoughts in the comments below. When Bridget finally rose, the morning light had fully entered the room. But it brought no comfort. She knew this vision was not yet complete. Something more was coming. Something that would reveal not only why the priest was condemned, but how easily such a fate could be repeated. Saint Bridget did not rise from the stone floor immediately. The silence that followed the vision was not empty. It was charged, watchful, as if the air itself waited for her response. The candle beside her flickered once, then steadied, casting long shadows against the wall. She pressed her palm to her chest, feeling her heart still racing, and understood with dread clarity that the vision was not finished. That night, sleep did not come gently. When it finally overtook her, it was not rest but descent. She found herself standing at the threshold of a vast, unseen place. There were no flames yet, only a cold absence of light, deeper than night. A voice spoke, not aloud, but within her soul. It was calm, terrible, just, "You have seen where he is. Now you must see why he remains." The darkness parted like a veil. Bridget saw the priest again, but now he was surrounded by echoes, not voices of demons, but familiar sounds, laughter from parish feasts, grateful words from villagers, praise spoken after Mass. Each sound appeared like a thread of light wrapping around him, not lifting him upward, but binding him in place. She watched as moments from his ministry unfolded with painful precision. A young man knelt in confession, trembling, admitting a grave sin. The priest listened and nodded gently. He offered reassurance, but no call to change, no warning of consequence. The penance was light, the words comforting. The soul left calm and unchanged. Another scene followed: a wealthy patron whose donations kept the church repaired. His sins were known, whispered about in the village. The priest saw them clearly and said nothing. He feared division. He feared scandal. He feared losing favor. Each choice seemed small, reasonable, even compassionate. But together they formed a pattern, a quiet betrayal not of kindness, but of truth. The voice returned. He loved peace more than righteousness, approval more than obedience, and mercy without justice. Bridget felt her stomach tighten. She had known priests like this. The world praised them. The faithful defended them. Even now, she knew that if she spoke of this vision, many would protest. How could such a good man be condemned? As if answering her unspoken thought, the vision shifted again. She now saw the parish after the priest's death. The people mourned sincerely. Candles burned. Tears fell. They spoke of his goodness, his gentleness, his refusal to burden them with fear. They prayed confidently for his soul, certain of his rewards. But Bridget saw something else. She saw souls drifting, souls who had never truly repented because repentance had never been demanded. Souls who mistook comfort for salvation. Souls who trusted a man's kindness more than God's law. And she understood the most terrifying truth of all. The priest's greatest punishment was not fire or torment. It was knowledge. Knowledge that he had been entrusted with keys and used them to keep doors comfortably closed. Knowledge that his silence had consequences far beyond his own soul. The darkness around him pulsed, not with rage, but with finality. Bridget fell to her knees within the vision, overcome. "Lord," she pleaded, "is there no mercy left for him?" The answer came not as condemnation, but as order. Mercy was offered, Mercy was entrusted. Mercy was neglected. The vision began to withdraw again, but this time it left something behind, an echo that followed Bridget back into waking life. She awoke before dawn, breath shallow, hands clenched. The bells had not yet rung. The world slept peacefully, unaware of what she had seen. She sat upright, staring into the half-light, realizing the vision was not merely about a single priest. It was a warning to all who lead souls and all who follow blindly. Would you have wanted such a priest? Kind, beloved, reassuring, if it meant never hearing the truth that could save you. Could you face that question yourself? Bridget rose slowly and wrapped her cloak around her shoulders. She knew now she must speak. Not to accuse, but to awaken, because silence, she had learned, can damn as surely as cruelty, and the final part of the vision, the part she feared most, had yet to be revealed. And the final part of the vision, the part she feared most, had yet to be revealed. Saint Bridget left her chamber before sunrise. Frost clung to the earth, and the sky above Sweden was pale and unmoving, as if holding its breath. She walked toward the church slowly, each step heavy with what she now carried. The bells would soon call the faithful to prayer, but Bridget knew that what she had been shown could not be wrung away with sound or soothed by ritual. As she entered the quiet nave, the air changed. Without warning, the vision returned, clearer, sharper, more terrible than before. She was no longer merely observing. She was shown. The darkness opened fully now, revealing what had been concealed. There was no chaos here, no screaming flames as the imagination might expect. Instead, there was order, cold, irreversible order. Souls were fixed where they stood, each bound by the truth they had chosen in life. And there, unmistakable, was the priest. He was not tormented by demons. He was surrounded by memories. Every mass he had celebrated replayed before him, not as he remembered them, but as heaven had seen them. Each time he raised the host, while harboring fear of human opinion. Each absolution given without correction. Each truth softened, delayed, or withheld. The voice returned one final time. He feared to lose their love. Now he knows what it means to lose mine. The priest looked up, toward a light he could no longer reach. Bridget saw understanding settle over him like a shroud. He saw the faces of his parishioners, not accusing, not condemning, but waiting. Waiting for guidance he had not given, waiting for courage he had not shown. And then came the most haunting moment of all. The priest spoke, not in protest, but in confession. "I was afraid," he said. "I wanted to be loved." The darkness did not answer. It did not need to. Bridget felt herself pulled backwards, the vision loosening its grip. But before it released her completely, she was shown one last image, the same parish, years later. A new priest stood at the altar, stern, clear, unafraid. Some parishioners left, others stayed. Fewer smiles filled the pews, but the souls who remained changed. The vision ended. Bridget collapsed against a stone pillar, her strength gone. She understood now why this revelation had been given to her and not proclaimed from the heavens. It was not meant to terrify the masses, but to awaken consciences quietly, one by one. That day she wrote, not names, not accusations, she wrote warnings. She wrote of responsibility, of truth spoken in love, of the danger of mistaking human approval for divine favor. Her words would travel far beyond that frozen parish, far beyond her lifetime. And still, centuries later, the warning remains. A shepherd may be loved by the flock and still lead them astray. A gentle voice may soothe and still endanger souls. Holiness is not measured by applause, but by faithfulness when applause fades. Bridget left the church as the bells rang at last. The sound echoed across the fields, beautiful and solemn. People paused to listen, comforted by its familiarity. But Bridget knew what bells cannot tell you. Salvation is not comfort. Love is not silence. And truth, when withheld, can become a form of cruelty. If you had stood in that parish, listening to that beloved priest, would you have questioned what you were never challenged to change? Share your thoughts in the comments below. The frost melted as the sun rose higher, and life continued as it always does, quietly, confidently, often unaware of the judgments forming in eternity. If this story stirred something in you, consider leaving a like, sharing your reflection, and following the channel for more hidden histories that still speak to us today. Because some warnings are not meant to end in fear, but in awakening.